Stephanie always had a way of making me feel small without ever raising her voice. It wasn't yelling or insults. It was those little jabs disguised as jokes, the smirks when I tried to talk about something I cared about, or the way she'd correct me in front of her friends just to feel superior. I used to think she was just strong-willed, confident. Turns out, it was something else entirely. We met in college. She was sharp, ambitious, and beautiful in that intimidating way that made people orbit around her. I was quieter, focused on finishing my degree and building a career that didn't seem to impress her much. She liked to say she saw potential in me. I think now she meant she saw something she could mold. At first, we worked. We really did. We got married young, rented a small apartment, and built what I thought was a decent life together. I worked long hours in product development. She started climbing the marketing ladder faster than anyone expected. And the higher she climbed, the less I seemed to exist. It started subtly. She'd come home late from client dinners, dressed like she was heading to a gala, not a business meeting. She'd leave her phone face down on the counter, always with that silent buzz that made my stomach twist. When I asked who it was, she'd sigh dramatically. "Don't start, Daniel. You know how exhausting my job is." I wanted to believe her. God, I did believe her, at least for a while. Because admitting that something was wrong meant admitting that maybe I wasn't enough for her anymore. But the thing that really stuck, the one moment I keep replaying, happened one evening after a stupid argument about me forgetting to sign some papers for her car lease. She rolled her eyes and said, almost under her breath, "If you vanished, no one would even notice." It was like being punched, but in silence. I just stared at her, trying to figure out if she realized what she'd said. She didn't look up. She just walked past me, grabbed her bag, and left for a work dinner. That sentence became the echo in my head for months. If you vanished, no one would notice. I tried to shake it off, tried to prove her wrong, maybe subconsciously. I started working harder, trying to be the husband she'd be proud to show off again. Flowers, small surprises, dinner plans. Every effort felt like throwing stones into an ocean. No reaction, no spark. Something inside me started to change. The silence between us grew thick, almost heavy. She stopped calling me babe, and I stopped trying to reach for her hand. And one night, when she said she was staying over at a coworker's place because they had an early presentation, I didn't argue. I just nodded. But I didn't sleep. Not a minute. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel hurt. I felt curious. And that curiosity, mixed with quiet anger, was the beginning of everything that came next. After that night, I stopped asking questions. I realized she preferred me silent. It made her comfortable. But silence also made it easier for me to observe. Stephanie was slipping, and she didn't even notice. It started with her perfume. She used to wear something light and floral. But now, when she came home after work dinners, the scent on her skin was deeper, almost musky, nothing she'd ever owned. The first time I noticed, she claimed she'd tried a new tester at the office. The third time, I stopped pretending to believe it. Then came the phone. She guarded it like her life depended on it. Always face down, always on silent. I caught her smiling at it once, that small, private smile, the kind she used to give me. When I walked in, she quickly tucked it under a folder and said, "Just a meme from a coworker." Her laptop followed the same pattern. Password changed. Notifications off. I wasn't the kind of guy who snooped, but she was turning me into one. The next big thing was her behavior around weekends. She used to live for Saturday mornings, pancakes, lazy coffee, staying in bed too long. Now she was suddenly meeting the team or training new hires. She'd dress up more for those trainings than for our anniversaries. One Saturday, I followed her, not out of jealousy, but because my gut told me to. She wasn't headed downtown to any conference room. She drove to a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes away, parked near a row of condos, and disappeared inside. I waited. 45 minutes later, she came back out with someone. A tall man in a navy coat. They didn't touch, but the way she looked at him, it was all in her eyes. She laughed at something he said, leaned in too close. Then he brushed something off her shoulder. Just a light gesture, but it was intimate. I sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I don't even remember driving home. I just know that by the time I got there, my chest felt hollow. That night, when she came back smelling like that same cologne again, she found me sitting at the table with a half-finished beer. She looked annoyed, not guilty. "What's with the face?" she said, tossing her bag onto the couch. Nothing, I lied. Just tired. She smirked like she'd won something I didn't even know we were fighting over. That was when I decided to stop reacting. I'd play dumb. Let her believe she was in control. Because the more she relaxed, the more mistakes she'd make. And oh, she did. Soon, her overnights became more frequent. Her phone calls more private. Her laughter louder, but never when I was in the room. The funny thing is, when you live with someone long enough, you start noticing everything. The small changes, the things they don't say, the energy they try to hide. One night, I overheard her whispering in the kitchen. The words were low, but clear enough to freeze me. Of course he doesn't suspect. He never does. She laughed softly, and right then, something inside me hardened. I stopped being her husband. I became her ghost. I stopped talking, stopped sharing, stopped existing in the way she expected. I watched, listened, gathered pieces. Because if she truly believed I'd vanish and no one would notice, I was going to prove her right. The night I finally uncovered the truth wasn't cinematic. No dramatic music, no rainstorm outside, no sudden shouting match. Just a quiet, ordinary Thursday, her late presentation night. She'd left around 6:30, dressed in a black dress I hadn't seen before. Said she'd bought it for confidence. I remember nodding, pretending not to care. By then, my emotions had cooled into something sharper, calculated, almost detached. While she was gone, I finally did what I'd avoided for months. I opened her old laptop, the one she thought I'd stopped using. It still had her cloud login saved. The first thing that loaded was her email. I didn't even need to search. There it was, right in the archive folder. A long thread between her and someone named M. At first, I thought maybe it was a client. But then I saw the subject line. Last time at your place, smirking face. My heart didn't race. It didn't even ache. It just went still. The messages weren't graphic, but they didn't need to be. Words like, miss your scent, can't stop thinking about you, and he'll never know were enough to burn themselves into my memory. She'd even sent him pictures, nothing explicit, but personal. Smiling selfies she never took for me anymore. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was one message from her that read. Honestly, sometimes I think if he just vanished, no one would notice. He's like a shadow that forgot it's supposed to matter. That line. That same line. The one she'd thrown at me months ago like it meant nothing. Except this time, she wasn't venting. She was joking, mocking me with someone else. Something cold moved through me then. Not rage. Not sadness. Just clarity. I copied everything. Every message, every photo, every timestamp. Put it all neatly in a folder named Proof. Then I printed a few of the most damning ones and slipped them into a plain white envelope. I didn't write her name on it. Just a single line on the front. If you vanished, no one would notice. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited. At 2:10 a.m., she came home. Her hair was messy, her lipstick faded. She looked at me sitting on the couch and froze for a second, then relaxed when she realized I wasn't saying anything. Why are you still up? She asked, her tone casual, as if nothing was off. Couldn't sleep, I said. Long day. She smiled, that fake tired smile. You should go to bed. I nodded, stood up, and handed her the envelope. She frowned. What's this? Something you said, I answered. I just wanted to make sure you remember it. I didn't wait to see her open it. Didn't wait to watch the expression change on her face when she saw the printed emails. I grabbed my jacket, walked out the door, and didn't look back. Outside, the air was cold. Clear. For the first time in years, I felt it fill my lungs without that familiar weight pressing down. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't coming back. She called me 17 times that night. I didn't pick up. I just sat in my car, parked on an overlook miles outside the city, watching the skyline fade into the early morning fog. My phone vibrated nonstop, her name lighting up again and again. Then it switched to texts. At first, Daniel, what is this? Where are you? Please call me. Then, you misunderstood everything. It's not what you think. And finally, you're overreacting. Come home. We can talk like adults. That last one made me laugh. Adults. That's what she called it. Lying, sneaking, rewriting reality until it made her look like the victim. By sunrise, I turned off my phone and drove to a small cabin I'd rented a few weeks earlier. It had no Wi-Fi, no signal, no neighbors. Just silence. I didn't even plan it for this. It was supposed to be a weekend escape for us. I'd booked it months ago, back when I still thought we could fix things. Funny how things align sometimes. When I finally checked my phone again that afternoon, she'd left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, angry. "You think this makes you some kind of hero? Walking out like that? You embarrassed me, Daniel. You humiliated me. I can't believe you'd snoop through my stuff like some psycho." She paused. I could hear her pacing. Then, "If you vanished, no one would notice? Really? You're proving me right. Just disappearing. How mature." And that was it. The same sentence. Even after I'd left her the evidence, she still couldn't see it. Or maybe she didn't want to. For days, I stayed silent. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Didn't reach out to friends or family. I wanted to see what she'd do if I really vanished. By the end of the week, she started messaging mutual friends. "Has anyone seen Daniel? I think he's not well." She even called my boss, pretending to be a worried wife. But what she didn't know was, I'd already sent my resignation from a new email account, liquidated my half of our joint savings, and transferred my remaining assets quietly to a private account she had no access to. I wasn't running. I was erasing myself. A week later, I went back home once, just once. She wasn't there, but the place looked lifeless, like a museum of our failed marriage. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the hallway, but the photos of us were gone. Maybe she'd hidden them out of guilt, or maybe she'd just replaced them with something else. I left one last envelope on the kitchen counter before locking the door for the final time. Inside it was a short note. "You were right, Stephanie. I vanished, and no one noticed, except you." Then I slipped my wedding ring inside and walked out. As I drove away, I checked the rearview mirror one last time. The house was still, empty, and for the first time since she'd said those words, I smiled. The first few nights alone felt unreal. I'd wake up expecting to hear her moving in the hallway, that faint click of her heels before work, the smell of her perfume lingering in the air. Then I'd open my eyes and remember, she wasn't there. Silence filled every corner of my new life. And I thought that's what I wanted. But silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's just noise without sound. I spent the first week drifting between numbness and confusion. I'd stare at my phone, not to check her messages. Those had stopped, but out of habit. Like my mind hadn't caught up to the fact that she no longer existed in my orbit. There were moments when I almost called her. Not because I missed her, but because I didn't know who I was without her shadow over me. She'd spent years making me smaller, shaping my worth around her moods, her validation. And now, without her, I felt hollow. I started taking long walks at night, through quiet neighborhoods where no one knew my name. I'd think about how many little things I'd let slide over the years. The subtle put-downs, the jokes, the way she'd talk over me in conversations, how her friends would laugh like it was harmless. She used to say I was too quiet, too careful, that I didn't light up a room. But maybe I wasn't meant to. Maybe not every person needs to shine for someone else. Maybe some of us are just meant to be steady. One night, sitting on the porch of that cabin, I replayed the moment she said it. "If you vanished, no one would notice." I realized something then. She wasn't wrong about how invisible I'd become, but she was wrong about why. I didn't fade because I was unworthy. I faded because I spent years dimming myself for her comfort. That thought hit hard. In a strange way, her betrayal stripped everything unnecessary away. The pain, the anger, even the loss, it all started to make room for something else. Clarity. I began rebuilding quietly. I found freelance work online, kept to myself, cooked simple meals, learned how to fill my days without noise. Sometimes I wondered if she was looking for me. Sometimes I hoped she was. But I never reached out. I never checked. Because the truth is, I didn't vanish. I just stopped existing in her world and started existing in mine again. After a few weeks in the cabin, something shifted. The quiet stopped feeling heavy. It started feeling clean. There was no perfume on my pillow anymore. No half-finished wine glasses on the counter. No tension waiting for me behind a front door. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel like it was borrowed from someone else's life. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to disappear forever. I was going to start over, on my own terms. But first, I needed closure. I contacted a lawyer, someone recommended by a friend I trusted completely. We met in a diner far from the city. She listened as I told her everything. The affair, the evidence, the note, the disappearance. When I finished, she just said quietly, "You've already taken the power back. Now take the rest." We drafted the divorce papers the same week. I wanted it clean, quiet, irreversible. I gave her the house, the car, everything that had her fingerprints on it. It wasn't about generosity, it was about freedom. Every item I gave up felt like cutting another rope. I mailed the papers directly to her office, addressed not to her home, but to the company she'd bragged about endlessly. I knew she'd hate that. Her image mattered more to her than truth ever did. The next day, I received one short message. You're making a mistake. No apology. No regret. Just ego, wrapped in desperation. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent the following weeks packing what little I owned into boxes that fit in the back of my truck. I donated half of it. The rest went with me to a small coastal town I'd found on a whim. Somewhere no one knew my story. The move felt like shedding old skin. The night before I left, I went back one last time. Not to see her, but to leave something behind. The garden she once forced me to maintain still looked perfect. The lights she'd strung above the patio were still there, glowing faintly. On that patio table, I left a single folded letter. It read, You said if I vanished, no one would notice. You were wrong. You noticed. And that's enough. I didn't sign it. Didn't have to. As I walked away for the last time, a strange calm came over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was done. That night, I drove until dawn. The highway was empty, the sky pale and endless. And somewhere between mile markers and memories, I realized I'd stopped checking the rearview mirror. For the first time, it felt like I had vanished, and I was completely fine with that. Revenge wasn't part of the plan. At least, not in the loud, dramatic way you see in movies. Mine came quietly, like frost creeping over a window pane, slow and unnoticeable until everything froze solid. See, when Stephanie mocked me for being boring, she forgot that quiet people tend to pay attention. They remember details. And they plan. Before I left, I'd already shifted my shares from our joint investments into a trust under my name only. She never noticed, because she'd stopped checking the accounts once she realized I wasn't competing with her. I'd also been the one managing the home insurance, the utilities, the loan documents, all of it tied to my name. When the divorce papers went through, my lawyer called with a smirk I could hear in her voice. She didn't read the fine print, did she? Turns out that everything I'd left her wasn't really hers. The house was still under my mortgage. The car lease was in her name, but the payments were set to auto-withdraw from my closed joint account. The moment I pulled the plug, the bills started bouncing. She called once, furious. What the hell did you do? The car's being repossessed, Daniel. I just said calmly. Guess no one noticed, right? Then I hung up. I won't lie, it felt good. Not the petty kind of good. The justified kind. The kind that comes after years of swallowing insults and convincing yourself you're overreacting. But that wasn't even the real revenge. The real one came when her company downsized 2 months later. Word got around that she'd gone through a messy divorce and that her performance wasn't the same. Corporate gossip spreads like wildfire, especially when fueled by someone's own arrogance. She'd built her image on control, confidence, and charm. And when those cracked, there was nothing underneath. Meanwhile, I kept moving quietly. I registered a new business, small consulting work, the same skills she used to belittle. Within months, I landed my first big client. By the end of the year, I'd built a modest but steady life. Simple, quiet, honest. I didn't flaunt it. Didn't post about it. I just lived. One afternoon, I got an email from her. The subject line was blank. I don't know how you can just walk away from everything like it meant nothing. You're not the same person I married. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, neither are you, and hit send. No anger. No sarcasm. Just truth. That was the last time I ever heard from her. It's been 2 years now. Sometimes I wake up before sunrise, make coffee, and watch the ocean from my porch. The world feels slower here. Kinder. I rent a small place above a bookstore, run my consulting business remotely, and talk to people who don't expect me to perform or prove anything. No one here knows about Stephanie, or what she said that night, or how deeply those words cut through me. And honestly, that's the best part. Because for the first time, I'm not living as someone's background character. In the beginning, I thought disappearing meant losing. I thought walking away meant she'd won, that I was proving her right. But time changes perspective. You start realizing that disappearing isn't always about escape. Sometimes it's about rebuilding in silence. I've learned how to be content without validation, how to enjoy my own company, how to trust myself again. I heard through a mutual friend that Stephanie moved away too. Apparently, her career never recovered. People said she wasn't the same. She got demoted, then left the company altogether. I don't know where she ended up, and I don't want to. There's no satisfaction in seeing someone crumble, especially when you've already outgrown the version of yourself that needed revenge. I didn't vanish. I simply stopped existing in her version of reality. And the truth is, she was right about one thing. When I disappeared, no one noticed. Not right away, but over time, people did. My old friends reached out, wondering where I'd gone. My parents came to visit the coast. I reconnected with people who actually saw me, not the version she'd convinced me to be. Turns out, disappearing was never the point. The point was to find out who I could become once the noise stopped. Now, when I think back to that night, her standing in the doorway, dismissive and smug, saying, "If you vanished, no one would notice," I smile. Because she was wrong. They noticed. I noticed. And that was enough. If anyone reading this is in that place, where you feel small, unseen, like you could disappear and the world wouldn't even blink, listen to me. You're not invisible. You're just standing in the wrong light. Step out of it. Walk away. You'll be shocked by how bright you really are once you stop letting someone else dim you.